He screamed it across the showroom floor in front of 15 employees and a client. "You are too stupid to run this business." Then he pointed at the door and told me I was fired effective immediately. My stepdad, the man who married my mum when I was 13, the man whose HVAC company I had helped build for 8 years, just humiliated and terminated me like I was nothing. What he did not know was that for the past 6 months I had been quietly moving every major client, every top technician, and every proprietary system to my own LLC. By the time he realized what happened, his company was already dying. Comment below where you are watching from. Hit like and subscribe, because what I did next dismantled everything he built and left him with nothing but regret. My real father died when I was 11. Heart attack at 42, completely unexpected. My mum was devastated, left alone with 2 kids and a mortgage she could barely afford on her salon income. For 2 years, it was just the 3 of us, me, my mum, and my younger brother Tyler. We struggled, but we made it work. When I was 13, my mum started dating Roger. He owned a heating and air conditioning company in Tucson, Arizona. Small operation, maybe 3 technicians and an office manager. He seemed nice enough at first, took us to ball games, bought us things, made my mum smile again. They got married when I was 14. Roger became my stepdad. At first things were okay. Roger was not trying to replace my dad, which I appreciated. He had his own kids from a previous marriage who lived with their mother in California. We did not see them much. Roger focused on his business and left the parenting mostly to my mum. I was fine with that arrangement. When I turned 16, Roger offered me a summer job at his company, filing paperwork, answering phones, basic office stuff. Minimum wage, but it was my first real job. I learned the business from the ground up. By 17, I was riding along with technicians learning how HVAC systems worked. By 18, I was taking service calls myself. I was good at it, really good. I understood the technical side, but I also understood people. How to talk to customers, how to explain problems without making them feel stupid, how to build trust. Customers started asking for me specifically. Roger noticed. When I graduated high school, he offered me a full-time position. I took it instead of going to college. My mum was disappointed. She wanted me to get a degree, but Roger convinced her that I had a future in the business, that he would teach me everything that eventually I could run the company, that this was better than 4 years of college debt. I believed him. I thought I was building towards something. For the next 8 years, I poured everything into that company. I worked 60-hour weeks, took emergency calls at 2 in the morning, handled the difficult customers, trained new technicians, built relationships with suppliers, expanded our client base. The company grew from 3 technicians to 12. Revenue tripled. We opened a second location. I was responsible for most of that growth, but Roger never made me a partner, never put anything in writing about my future ownership. Always said we would get to that eventually, once the business was more stable. I trusted him. He was family. Why would he screw me over? Around year 6, things started changing. Roger began taking credit for work I did. Clients I brought in became his clients in conversation. Ideas I implemented became his strategies. He started talking down to me in front of employees, making comments about how I was just doing what he taught me. Small digs at first easy to brush off, but they got worse. He also started bringing his oldest son Marcus into the business. Marcus was 25, had bounced between jobs for years, had no experience in HVAC. But Roger was determined to give him a role. Made him a manager overnight, put him in charge of scheduling. Marcus was terrible at it. double-booked technicians sent people to wrong addresses, ignored customer complaints. I had to fix his mistakes constantly. When I brought concerns to Roger, he got defensive, said I was being too hard on Marcus, that he just needed time to learn. Meanwhile, I had spent 8 years learning from the bottom up and was still not a manager on paper. The favoritism was blatant. I was the workhorse who built the company. Marcus was the son who would inherit it. By year 7, I saw the writing on the wall. Roger was never going to make me a partner. This was always going to be his company, then Marcus's company. I was just labor, valuable labor, but disposable once I was no longer useful. That realization hurt worse than anything. I had given up college, given up other opportunities, given 8 years of my life to build something I would never own. That is when I started making plans, quietly. Carefully, I began documenting everything. Client lists, supplier contacts, pricing structures, proprietary methods I had developed for troubleshooting systems. I backed it all up to personal drives. I also started talking to the top technicians, the ones I had trained, the ones who were loyal to me rather than Roger. Planting seeds, asking hypothetical questions about what they would do if they could work somewhere better. 6 months before everything exploded, I registered my own LLC, Desert Comfort HVAC, filed all the paperwork, got licensing, set up a business bank account, all under the radar. Roger had no idea. I also started reaching out to our biggest clients, not overtly poaching, just maintaining relationships, making sure they knew me personally, not just as a representative of Roger's company. Then came the day everything fell apart. It was a Thursday in August. We had a big commercial client, a property management company, that accounted for about 30% of our revenue. Their maintenance contract was up for renewal. I had managed their account for 4 years. They loved our work. Specifically, they loved my work. I prepared a proposal for contract renewal with a slight rate increase justified by expanded service coverage I had designed. Brought it to Roger for approval. He took one look at it and said it was too expensive. Cut my proposed rate by 15%, which would barely cover our costs. I tried to explain that the client valued quality and would pay for the expanded service. Roger dismissed me, said I did not understand business, that we needed to stay competitive on price. I went back to the client with Roger's reduced proposal. They were confused, asked why we were cutting services they specifically wanted. I was honest, told them it was a pricing decision from ownership. They were not happy. Said they would think about it. I knew we were about to lose them. A week later, the client called Roger directly, said they were declining the renewal. Roger lost his mind, called me into his office, accused me of sabotaging the deal. I explained exactly what happened, that I had proposed what the client wanted, but he cut it down. He did not want to hear it, started yelling that I was incompetent, that I had cost him his biggest contract, that maybe I was not as good as I thought I was. Then Marcus walked in. Without knowing any context, he sided with his father, started piling on, saying I had probably mishandled the relationship from the start, that maybe someone else should manage the commercial accounts. Roger agreed, said effective immediately, Marcus would take over all major accounts. I would go back to running service calls. I was demoted. After 8 years of building that business, I was being pushed aside for Roger's unqualified son. I stayed calm. Said if that is what he wanted, fine. Walked out of his office and went back to work, but inside I was done. I activated my exit plan that night. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked fast. I reached out to every key client I had relationships with, told them I was starting my own company, that I would offer the same quality service they were used to, with more personalized attention and better pricing. 8 out of 10 said yes immediately. They were following me, not the company name. I also talked to the technicians, offered them jobs at my new company with better pay and actual respect. 5 of the 7 best guys said yes. They had all dealt with Roger's condescending attitude and Marcus's incompetence. They were ready to leave. I gave them start dates 2 weeks out. I secured a small office space cheaper than Roger's overhead. Ordered trucks, tools, inventory. Set up scheduling software, got insurance finalized contracts with suppliers who knew me personally and were happy to work with my new company. Everything was ready to launch. I just needed the right moment to quit. That moment came on a random Tuesday morning. I arrived at work to find Roger in a rage. The property management company, the big client we lost, had just signed with a competitor. Roger was spiraling, blaming everyone but himself. When I walked in, he turned on me, started yelling that this was my fault, that I had tanked the relationship, that I was too stupid to handle important accounts. I stayed quiet, which made him angrier. He got in my face screaming, called me worthless, said I was lucky he gave me a job in the first place, said I would be nothing without him. Then he said the line that sealed his fate. "You are too stupid to run this business or any business." The entire showroom went silent. Employees stared. A client waiting for service looked horrified. I just stood there calm, waiting for him to finish. Then Roger pointed at the door. "You are fired. Get out. Now." I smiled. Actually smiled. Roger looked confused. I said, "Okay, good luck with everything." Then I walked out, did not clean out my desk, did not say goodbye, just left. Roger probably thought he had won, that he put me in my place. He had no idea what was about to hit him. I went straight to my new office, called every client I had lined up, told them I was officially open for business and ready to take their calls. Then I called the 5 technicians who were coming with me, told them to give their 2 weeks' notice that day. All of them did. By noon, Roger had lost half his workforce. Then the cancellations started. Clients calling Roger's office, terminating contracts, saying they were moving to a new provider. 8 major accounts gone in one afternoon. Roger called me 15 times. I did not answer. He left voicemails progressively more panicked, demanding to know what I was doing. I deleted them without listening all the way through. By the end of the week, Roger's company was in crisis. He had lost his best technicians, his biggest clients, and had no idea how to replace either. The remaining techs were overwhelmed. Service calls were getting missed. New clients were not coming in. His son Marcus, who he put in charge of managing everything, was completely underwater. I meanwhile was thriving. My new company hit the ground running. The clients who followed me were happy, spreading word to other property managers and business owners. I hired 2 more technicians within the first month, bought a second truck. My overhead was lower than Roger's, so I could offer competitive pricing while still making better margins. Everything he had taught me about running the business, I was now using to destroy his. 3 months after I left, Roger showed up at my office. Unannounced, uninvited, he walked in like he owned the place, demanded to talk to me. I kept him waiting 20 minutes just because I could. When I finally let him into my office, he looked terrible. Thinner, older, stressed. His company was failing and it showed. He tried to play it cool at first, said he wanted to talk business, that maybe we could work together, refer clients to each other, avoid competing directly. I laughed, told him there was nothing to discuss. He had fired me, called me stupid in front of everyone, and now he wanted cooperation, no chance. Then he switched tactics. Got angry, accused me of stealing his clients, poaching his employees. I reminded him that clients are free to choose who they work with, that employees are free to seek better opportunities, that I had not stolen anything. I had simply offered a better option and people chose it, all perfectly legal. Roger threatened to sue me, said I had violated some non-compete agreement. I asked him to show me the agreement. He could not because it did not exist. In 8 years he never had me sign a non-compete, never protected himself legally because he never thought I would leave. That oversight was costing him everything. He tried begging then, said his business was falling apart, that he had bills to pay employees depending on him, asked if I would at least stop taking his clients, give him a chance to rebuild. I looked at him and said, "You told me I was too stupid to run a business. Looks like I am doing just fine. How is your business doing?" He left without another word. I never saw him again in person, but I heard things from former employees, from clients, from suppliers. Roger's company continued to decline. More clients left. More technicians quit. He had to close the second location, sold off trucks and equipment to cover debts. Within 6 months of my departure, his company was a shell of what it used to be. My mum called me around that time. She was upset, said I was destroying Roger, that he was family, that I should have more compassion. I told her what he said to me, how he fired me in front of everyone, how he treated me like disposable labor for 8 years. She went quiet. She knew Roger had a temper, but did not realize how bad it was. I told my mum I loved her, but I was not going to feel guilty for succeeding. That Roger made his choices. He chose to belittle me, fire me, treat me like I was nothing. I chose to prove him wrong. Those were the consequences of his actions. She did not like it, but she understood. Our relationship stayed intact, which I was grateful for. Roger's company limped along for another year before he finally sold it. Some regional HVAC chain bought the remaining contracts and client list for a fraction of what the business used to be worth. Roger basically gave it away just to get out from under the debt. I heard he took a job as a maintenance supervisor at a hospital. Went from business owner back to employee. The irony was not lost on me. Marcus, his son, disappeared from the industry entirely. Last I heard, he was selling insurance. Never spoke to either of them again. Burned that bridge completely and never regretted it. It has been 4 years since Roger fired me. 4 years since I walked out of his company and built my own. Desert Comfort HVAC is now one of the top-rated HVAC companies in Tucson. We have 18 technicians, 6 trucks, and over 200 regular commercial and residential clients. Annual revenue is pushing $2 million. I own it outright. No partners, no investors, just me. I bought a house last year, 3-bedroom in the foothills with a view of the Catalina Mountains, paid cash. I drive a new truck, take vacations, have money saved. I am doing better than I ever would have under Roger. And I did it all by being exactly what he said I was not, smart enough to run a business. The technicians who came with me are still with me. I treat them well, pay above market rate, offer health insurance, give Christmas bonuses, create a work environment where people feel valued. Several of them have told me leaving Roger's company was the best decision they ever made. That means more to me than the money. I also made one of them, a guy named Anthony, who was with me from the start, a partner. Gave him 15% equity in the company. He earned it. Helped build this from nothing. I am not Roger. I do not hoard ownership and make empty promises. When someone contributes real value, I reward them properly. The clients who followed me have been loyal. They refer new business constantly. Our reputation is built on quality work and honest pricing. No games, No upselling unnecessary services, just good work at fair prices. Turns out that is a winning formula. Who knew I ran into one of Roger's old clients about a year ago? She told me Roger's company had completely fallen apart after I left, that the quality dropped, the service was terrible, that she regretted not following me sooner. She switched to my company and has been happy ever since. Stories like that validate everything. My mum and I repaired our relationship. She divorced Roger 2 years ago, said she finally saw him for who he really was, controlling, arrogant, unwilling to take responsibility for his failures. She apologized for defending him initially, said she should have stood up for me. I told her it was okay, that I understood she was in a difficult position. We have dinner once a week now. She is proud of what I built. My younger brother Tyler works for me now. He is 24, just finished a trade school program for HVAC certification. I hired him as a junior technician. He is learning the same way I did from the ground up. Difference is, I am actually investing in his future. When he is ready, I will make him a partner too. This business will be our family legacy, built on respect and merit, not entitlement. People ask me if I feel bad about what happened to Roger, if I regret being so ruthless. The answer is no, not even a little. He had 8 years to treat me right, to make me a partner, to show appreciation for the work I did. Instead, he took me for granted, talked down to me, and then publicly humiliated and fired me. He made his bed. I just made sure he had to lie in it. What Roger did not understand is that people are not stupid for being loyal. They are not weak for working hard. They are not disposable just because you hold the title. The technicians, the clients, the suppliers, they all chose to follow me because I treated them like human beings. Roger treated everyone like assets to be managed. When you do that, people leave the first chance they get. Building my own company taught me what leadership actually means. It is not about control. It is about earning respect. It is not about taking credit. It is about giving it. It is not about hoarding ownership. It is about sharing success with the people who help create it. Roger never learned that, and it cost him everything. I am 30 now, own a successful business, have a good relationship with my mom and brother, have employees who respect me, have clients who trust me, have a life I built entirely on my own terms. None of that would have happened if Roger had not fired me. So in a weird way, I should thank him. He set me free to become everything he said I could not be. The best revenge is not destroying someone. It is succeeding without them. Proving that what they said about you was wrong, building something better than they ever could. That is what I did. And every day my business grows while his fades into memory is a reminder that respect and hard work matter more than titles and ego. Roger called me stupid and threw me out. I took his clients, his employees, and his market share. Then I built an empire on the ashes of his arrogance, and I did it all by being exactly what he never was, fair, honest, competent, and smart enough to see an opportunity when it presented itself. So to anyone working for someone who does not appreciate you, who talks down to you, who makes you feel worthless, hear this: you are not stuck, you are not trapped, you have skills, you have relationships, you have value. And if they are too stupid to see it, someone else will. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe you are one decision away from changing your entire life. I was, and I have never looked back. Have you ever worked for someone who treated you terribly, and you fantasized about beating them at their own game? Did you ever actually do it, or did you just move on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story motivated you, smash that like button and share it with anyone grinding under a boss who does not appreciate them. Subscribe for more real stories about standing up, fighting back, and winning on your own terms. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting people who refuse to be broken by those who underestimate them. Keep building your own success, and remember, the best response to being called stupid is proving them spectacularly wrong. Stay strong out there.